Welcome to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. If you're like me, you are someone who has set goals for their life, set 1 year, 5 year, maybe even 10, even further out in the future goals of what you want your life to look like. In fact, I've talked about this quite a bit on the blog, about the gift or the benefit of knowing where we want to go with our lives, as that kind of gives us a roadmap in order so that we don't meander and get off track. And then once we do set these goals, we assess ourselves along the way, which is what I usually do. And if we make them, it's fantastic. If we make them before we expected to, it's even more amazing. But if we don't meet these marks, whether they are in our career, whether they are in our relationships, whether they are with anything that we long for, because we think that if that event occurs, if it materializes, we will feel more content. We will have achieved this somewhat elusive happiness that we're not feeling at the moment. So when these don't happen in our timeline, we can doubt ourselves. We can lose a bit of confidence. We can perhaps slow down our dreaming and think that we're not going to make it. We're not worthy of that. And so while goals are a good thing, today what I'd like to talk about are the 6 fixed life ideas that we need to let go of. Why do we need to let go of these 6 life ideas? Because by letting this stuff go, we actually are opening ourselves to receiving that happiness that we seek in the first place. It sounds contradictory. I know it sounds very contradictory, but it actually is a paradox. It actually is a truth. And what got me thinking about this was that over the weekend, one of my new favorite magazines arrived. I don't know if any of you guys have been subscribing to it or reading it, but Porter Magazine has been now racing up the charts as being one of my favorite magazines. There are fantastic articles in there. The editorials and the style layouts are comparable to Vogue. But there was one article that really struck me, and I've reread it a few times. And it appears in their winter issue, 2014, with Cate Blanchett on the cover, which will always grab my attention. I absolutely am always mesmerized by her unique beauty and obviously her talent. And the article was written by the former style critic or fashion critic of the New York Times, Kathy Horn. And she talks about this idea of what it takes to walk away from it all. And at the heart of her conversation is this idea of letting go. Now, we're not talking about letting go of or being able to let go of loved ones should they pass on, or relationships when they no longer work. What she actually is talking about are these fixed ideas we have of how our life should be in order to be happy. Let me share with you the quote that got me thinking. Here we go. Letting go obviously has several meanings. Letting go of the past, letting go of grief. But surely the most resistant is letting go of fixed ideas, keeping our minds open to a future we cannot see, end quote. And I think part of why it's so hard to let go of what we think our life needs to be in order to be happy is that if we do let go of those ideals, it's frightening. We actually are saying, life, show me what you got. Show me your hand. Let me see if I like it. What if we don't? What if we don't like it? Oh, but what if we do? What if it's better than we could ever imagine? So today I'm going to talk about those 6 life ideas that we somewhat become fixated on. And maybe only a few of these are ones that you fixate on and you have let go of the other ones. That's fantastic. And we'll talk about the reasons why. And it's not that these things can't happen, but they may happen in a way that you didn't expect. All right. So that's where we're going to start today. What are those 6 fixed life ideals that we need to let go of? All right. Let's get started with number 1. The first fixed life idea that we need to let go of is a specific career path that will ensure our happiness once we achieve it. For example, maybe you set a goal when you're in high school, maybe in college, or maybe you've totally changed your track in your adult life with regards to your career, and you have very specific goals as to what you're going to have to achieve in order to be happy. For example, in the education world, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to become a teacher. I'm going to be a teacher for a certain amount of years. I will work on my administrative license, and then I'll become an administrator. Once I become an administrator, I will start working my way up so I can become the principal. Ooh, and maybe the superintendent. So I'm earning the big bucks, and I am someone of da-da-da-da. And then I will be happy. Great goal. We need people in leadership positions, men and women. But what if that is actually not going to make you happy? What if it works out? Fantastic. It's having the goal that's important. It's how you get there or where life takes you in the meantime that we need to just sit back and ride the wave with. A great quote that Kathy Horn uses or states in her article in Porter had to do with careers, and I thought it was very interesting. Let me share it with you. Quote, "Keep your priorities straight. Don't look, though, too far into the future, and be prepared to get into the motor and journey on. Any psychiatrist will tell you that these are essential to mental health. Careers, while obviously requiring time and dedication, generally take care of themselves, often to our surprise." End quote. Now, how I interpreted this is that we all need to have priorities. We need to have goals. First of all, we need to have goals of where we want to go. We need to have clear priorities of what we will say yes to and what we will say no to. I like to consider these as kind of like the bumpers in a bumper boat ride, in the sense they'll keep us out of the gutter. They'll keep us out of going where we will drift off into no man's land. We want to have our priorities straight. But as long as we're going in a general direction towards that goal and we're willing to put in the work, who knows what job offer will come up? As long as we have strong work ethic, as long as we're always doing our best, who knows where our career will go? I like to think of it as change is inevitable. And when you're a kid, you may have wanted to become an astronaut for NASA, but you could not have predicted that NASA would be defunded when you became an adult. Now, flip that on its head. Now that we're trying to get to Mars and to asteroids with this new Orion spacecraft, they're preschoolers now. The preschoolers today could be the astronaut that actually gets to Mars. But you don't know what's going to change with regards to careers that'll open up when you become an adult. So I think the key is, yes, have a goal. Have a goal for what you want to go and achieve. Set your priorities, set your bumpers so that you don't go drifting off. But then see where your life takes you with regards to your career. See what job opportunities come up. You never know when a headhunter is going to come up to you and present you with a job that you never thought possible. And you look at it and you're like, that's too good to be true. But why not say yes? Your work ethic, your resume up until this point has got you this opportunity. And just because it doesn't line up with the goal you set 10, 20 years ago, doesn't mean you shouldn't take it. A lot of what we're talking about here is that idea that happiness resides in the journey, not the destination. Absolutely, that's what we're talking about. But it's about not being so rigid with yourself and allowing yourself to enjoy parts of this journey that may not have been scripted in your mind. And that's okay. That's okay. And that's where the fun comes in. That's where the fun comes in. So number 1, let go of a fixed idea of what your career path must look like in order for you to be happy. And I think as all 6 of these are going to kind of reveal, you will find even more contentment. One of the things I can throw out there of my own personal experience is when I was in high school, I was bound to determine I was going to become a teacher. Part of the reason I was going to become a teacher is that's what I watched my mom do. And I knew how happy she was doing it. And I wanted a job that made me happy and had a steady salary. But what I realized, and I point this out in my book, I point it out in chapter 1, is that for me, something still was missing. For my mom, nothing was missing. She loved teaching. And everyone has their interests, their passions that they can discover with their career path. It's up to us to listen to what speaks to us and go in that direction. We don't know when that tickle of a passion will infect us. We'll be like, oh, I got to go with that. We don't know when that's going to happen. It may happen when we're young, may happen when we're older. We don't know, but we need to listen for it. And that's what I mean by you may not be traveling down the career path you thought you were going to travel. So long as you're traveling in a general direction, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine. And back to my journey, as you already know, somehow I discovered blogging. And now I couldn't imagine not doing it. But I could never have predicted that I was going to be a blogger back in my teenage years. Never. What was blogging? Email was barely getting started when I graduated from high school. So it was impossible to know. It's a matter of just putting yourself on the right direction and the right path and then seeing what unfolds. And I think you will be amazed. All right. Enough about number one. Moving on to number two. Number two of the fixed ideas of life that we need to let go of is this checklist partner. And what I mean by the checklist partner, I think you probably already know, is this perfect list, this list of perfect things that we want our partner to be able to embody so that then we will finally be happy. Oh, please rip that up. Please rip that up. I'm not saying that we should just go and date whomever, but kind of in a way. I was watching over the weekend. I've been wanting to watch this film for a while because it was one of this actor's last films. Enough Said, with Julia Dreyfus and James Gandolfini. And one of the things that kind of ties in with this is that she is not initially attracted to him, and he plays along and he says he's not attracted to her either. And eventually she realizes, yeah, he's not really my physical type, but man, we can have a conversation. We never have a moment of awkwardness with us. We're very comfortable with each other. And she learns to get to know him on a different level. And then she becomes even more attracted to him. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be a level of physical attraction. I think most of us know that there has to be some kind of chemistry in some capacity with the people that we want to date or potentially be in a relationship with. But it's this idea that if they have a certain job, if they're a certain height, if they are a certain da-da-da-da, then I will consider dating them. And I've had enough experience to know that some of these things just are pointless. And we're left after the fact reflecting on how pointless such criteria was. That really didn't matter. So that checklist, while you definitely need to, keep your standards with regards to how someone treats you and makes you feel, with regards to feeling respected and valued and committed and loyal and kind, those are behaviors. But those external things that we really have no control over, the physical attributes, the job, there's so many things. We need to maybe reconsider them, because who knows who was right around that corner that could be someone worth getting to know if only we would stop putting barriers up the moment they are introduced to us. Something to consider for sure. And that was number two. Moving on to number three. Number three is letting go of the fixed idea of what a family should look like. And the reason I want to talk about this one is because there isn't really a definition that should be set for anybody except for you and those you consider your family. In my classroom, I teach Death of a Salesman. And of course, this idea of what an ideal family was supposed to be as projected in the 1950s by the propaganda of the American media is while beautiful and ideal on its surface, you see everyone being happy and blissful and wonderful and congenial to everybody. The two children, the white picket fence, living out in the suburbs, mom and dad with one dog. It seems great if that's what fits with your purpose and talents and ideals. But what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? And we can include in this whole idea of the traditional family, we can include in this idea of when or if one gets married, or if our family has to be blood related, or if it's just a nucleus of friends that we now call family because they're there for us. They're always there for us. Now, an interesting study came out recently in the New York Times Magazine, that the divorce rate was dropping. That whole idea that all 50% of marriages end in divorce is actually a myth. That's a great news. It's falling. For the last 20 years, the divorce rate has been falling. The 1980s is when it hit its peak of the most divorces, and it's steadily been falling each decade. Now, granted, in, for example, the 1990s, those people have been married 15 years, and maybe that number will change as their marriages go on into the future. But right now, the divorce rate is falling. Part of that reason is people are getting married later. Another part of that reason is that more women are financially independent, and so therefore more marriages, when they take place, are not out of necessity, but for romance, for love. And another part of that is that people aren't feeling forced to be married simply because they have a kid. There's a wider acceptance of single parents. There's a lot of different factors there, birth control being one also, obviously, as well. But it's interesting to note that this idea of when someone should get married and if someone should get married, as I point out in my book, half of all Americans, adults, are not married. They're single. And most of those people are single by choice. Now, granted, another study says that nearly 80% of all people in America will eventually get married at some point. There's this shift in the idea that one needs to get married soon or at a young age or at all. And it's more out of you're choosing to get married because you want to. You're choosing to get married because you want to. And I think that's the whole thing of this idea of letting go of this fixed notion of a traditional family. How you define it is going to be up to you. It's a matter of figuring out what it is that you want. Maybe your only children are going to be dogs, and that's completely fine. Maybe you don't want children at all. Maybe you want to adopt children. I don't know. But in keeping with the point of this entire episode of this podcast, is that often we will begin our adult lives, even in our childhood, it'll be this idea of what family should look like, of what your family's going to look like. When you become an adult, you're going to do this, and that, and the other. And if it doesn't work out, you get upset. You feel like you failed. But I think that's part of, similar to the career path, keep your priorities, have those bumpers of what you will and won't accept, but don't be so rigid, number one. And who knows how your family is going to come together. You don't know when it will come together. You don't know how or who will be part of that beautiful, beautiful masterpiece. But don't be so set that it has to look one certain way. Because often, just like everything else, as long as we let go and aren't so rigidly hanging on, we'll realize that life may have an even better idea in mind. And when we get older, we'll look back and go, I am so thankful that I wasn't so picky. And if I would have been, I may have just lost one of the best opportunities had it passed me by. So something to consider, something to keep in mind. Be a little less rigid. Let go of what the definition of family is to you. It's really up to you. And I think it's finding that strength to understand who you are and also live in that, embody it. And when you do that, you will find people that will respect that and value that because you're doing it wholeheartedly, because it's in line with your purpose, your values, and your ideals. So letting go. Number 3 is letting go of that traditional definition of what a family should look like. And I think anytime we throw that word should in there, we have to question, okay, who's doing the shoulding? Who's telling us we need to do this? If we're the ones saying that, if we're the ones, because it's in line with who we are, that's great. But if we're not, then let's reconsider, where's that coming from? Why is it coming? Why is it being said? So that's number 3. All right. So we've talked about the first three life ideas that we need to let go of. I'm going to take a quick 1-minute intermission, and I will see you on the other side with the remaining three. Welcome back. Let's dive right back into the remaining three fixed life ideas that we need to let go of in order to find that happiness that we're ultimately seeking. Number 4 is to let go of age stereotypes. And I'm talking across the board, any age. We grow up. When each of us grow up, we have certain experiences with people at certain ages. For example, if we have a grandmother who wasn't able to do something at her particular age, or maybe a grandfather or mother who was able to do something at her particular age. For example, if you have a grandmother who in her 50s or 60s is running marathons, and you grow up with that. You grow up seeing her running marathons or rock climbing or climbing mountains, whatever it is. In your mind, you're thinking, okay, at 50 or 60, you can do that. You as a child, it's becoming nurtured into you that that's acceptable, that that's absolutely doable. But on the flip side, if you see your grandmother or grandfather becoming very unhealthy or unable to move, you associate that age oftentimes with the inability to do certain things. And I think as we grow up, we need to reassess. We need to reassess what our definition of a certain age is. And I think what most importantly we need to realize is that every person is going to be able to do and wants to do different things at various ages in their lives. It ultimately comes down to how they are taking care of themselves and their attitude and their capacity to challenge life and to be curious about life. So more than anything, it comes down to our perception when we're younger, and then how we carry that into our adulthood. So I think that's huge. Understanding that age stereotypes, there isn't something that you can or can't do for the most part at any age. At any age. Nowadays, we're seeing that be defied constantly. Here's a simple little trivia entertainment example. I was so tickled by this when they announced that the new James Bond Spectre film was going to be coming out next fall, and they talked about one of the new Bond girls that was going to be starring alongside Daniel Craig. It was Monica Bellucci, who is this Italian movie star who is 50 and absolutely stunningly beautiful. Defies a stereotype that so many people perceive to be what a 50-year-old may look like. And I think she just epitomizes this notion that we need to let go of age stereotypes. That's just one example. There's so many more out there. It starts with how we treat ourselves, how we take care of ourselves, and then ultimately finishes with how we think about our age. If we take care of our bodies, if we feed ourselves right, if we have an attitude and a curiosity about life, and we're constantly doing things, there is, for the most part, very little that we can't do, regardless of our age. And I think we can help ourselves out by letting go of these stereotypes. So we can also help other people out too by not assuming that because someone is a certain age that they can or can't or have not been able to do certain things. And I think that will open so many doors and lift so many barriers and limits. And it starts with each one of us. It starts with each one of us. And again, that's when things we did not expect can start to materialize. And that is, again, where more wonderful things can occur than we ever thought possible. And that's number 4. Number 5 kind of goes along with that same kind of idea of stereotypes. Number 5 is to let go of gender stereotypes. Today, more than ever, men and women are doing all sorts of things that in previous decades would have been scoffed at. And I think it again comes down to knowing who we are individually, understanding what our passions are, and respecting that in other people. Maybe it's a career path that mainly in the past women have always pursued, or vice versa, men have always pursued. But now it's really about letting people pursue what they feel they are best at, what they are drawn to, what they have a passion for, what they have an innate ability to do. And as soon as we realize that regardless of gender, we can pursue just about anything, we open up the door to so many more opportunities and creations and inventiveness and collaborations that could create things we can't even fathom right now. And it's really just, again, about letting go of the limits, stopping the limitations. I think that's huge and very significant, and will, again, be very similar to number 4, and allow things to occur that we may not have been able to foresee and are often going to be things that are going to surpass our expectations. So 4 and 5, basically just generally letting go of stereotypes. Letting go of stereotypes. It will help not only ourselves, but others as well. And last but not least, in number 6, is letting go of waiting for tomorrow or waiting for things to be perfect before we proceed. Oftentimes, one of the things that women, more so than men, studies have shown, will allow to hold themselves back is that women feel they have to be nearly perfect, if not perfect, before they go in and ask for the promotion or wear that dress that they want to wear. Whatever it is, the likelihood of a woman versus a man feeling that they need to reach a certain level of perfection before they proceed to go after what they desire is that a woman will wait until she thinks she has reached perfect, whereas a man is less likely to do that. They will, with their confidence, go in and play the role or believe that they'll be able to figure it out. Whatever the promotion is going to allow them to do, they'll be able to figure it out. They have confidence, more confidence in themselves. Now, granted, these are studies. There's always anomalies on either side. But I think what's important here is to keep in mind that we need to let go of this idea of being perfect before we can acquire or go after the life, the goals, the dreams that we want. Okay, so your hair is not perfect. So what? Step out the door. The wind will probably blow it anyway. And it's your smile. It's your confidence. It's what you're talking about, your demeanor, the information you're going to share that's going to keep that conversation going or get you that interview. Not that one stray hair that was bothering you in the bathroom when you were trying to do it. Let go of perfection. Stop waiting for tomorrow. Tomorrow is, as we know, too often for many people, not something to be enjoyed. And I think some recent events have happened this fall with acquaintances and friends of mine that has made me realize this more than anything. I'm not saying go jump off cliffs every single day and just take unnecessary risks. What I am saying, though, is why not do what is aching to be done? Why not pursue it? Stop holding yourself back. Yeah, you're not your perfect self, and you never will be, but you'll be better tomorrow by trying, because you will have learned something. You will have shown yourself that you have the strength to do something that maybe was a little frightening, whether it's with your career, whether it's sitting down having that conversation with a family member, whether it's simply sharing with the world or a close friend who you really are and taking down those walls and barriers and realizing I don't have to be perfect to find happiness. And I think with all 6 of these fixed life ideas that we're talking about today, we don't always know what is going to genuinely make us happy. There's a quote that is shared in the article by Kathy Horn again that I want to end our discussion on today, and it's from a book called Stumbling on Happiness, which I highly recommend you pick up and read. And it came out a few years ago, but the quote is written by Daniel Gilbert, the author, and he says, "We insist on steering our boats because we think we have a pretty good idea of where we should go. But the truth is, that much of our steering is in vain. Not because the boat won't respond and not because we can't find our destination, but because the future is fundamentally different than it appears in our mind's eye. In other words, we think we know what's going to make us happy. We think we know, and we may be pretty close through our life experiences. But if we've never experienced something, how can we know it won't make us happy? So that's where the letting go comes in, and letting life dance with us. Or, as I shared in an Instagram quote this week, this is where we need to dance with life. This is where we need to dance with life. And I'd like to share that quote with you. And it says something like this: so long as we are willing to keep dancing with life, amazing things beyond our ignorant comprehension begin to unfold in their own time. And that is really at the foundation we're talking about today. By letting go of perceptions, of rigid expectations, we open up a world of possibilities that will eventually, if we allow them, formulate into a dance that we can enjoy and discover amazing memories that we may never have been able to predict otherwise. For all of the show notes, please stop by the blog, www.thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast16. You'll find these quotes, you'll find the transcript, and any other links that we talked about today. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for a petit plaisir that has to do with Paris, oysters, and one of my favorite authors. You will no doubt recognize this author's name, Muriel Giuliano, the best-selling author of French Women Don't Get Fat and French Women for All Seasons, and so many other titles that continue to reach the top of the bestsellers list. Well, she has come out with another book, and this book is specifically for foodies. And if anyone can talk about food and travel and the world, Muriel Giuliano definitely has the clout and the credibility. This particular book is all about oysters. Some may initially go, what? Others were maybe, oh, finally, thank goodness. Show me how to appreciate them. And that is exactly what she does in her book titled Meet Paris Oyster, a love affair with the perfect food. The book just came out in early November of this year, and I was fortunate enough to get a copy, and I am loving it. It's definitely a very specific topic, but she takes you through so much. You'll learn to appreciate the beauty that is the oyster. Did you know that there are 400 species of oyster? I had no idea. No idea. She talks the reader through the details of how to open it, what the different types of oyster are. And much like learning how to taste or appreciate wine, she shows you and teaches you, I should say, how to appreciate and enjoy an oyster. Now, a book from Muriel will not be complete without her recommended recipes, and she does include more than a handful in this book, which I greatly appreciate because, yeah, you can order an oyster in a restaurant, but what if you want to enjoy it at your next soiree? Wouldn't that be the most fantastic hors d'oeuvre to shock your guests with, and then they taste it and it's like, oh, did not know how amazing they could taste. Absolutely think that this is a book to pick up if you're trying to maybe explore new realms of your food palette, or if you have a foodie in the family, this is the perfect Christmas gift for their stocking. It's a little bit smaller book than her previous books. It's adorable in that Paris or French blue on the spine, and it's just a lot of fun to read. She has a few of her own stories, as she always incorporates so wonderfully, and she also takes you through the top 10 places to enjoy an oyster, which takes us, the reader, around the world. She'll share all sorts of different restaurants outside of that top 10 list and her experience of going there and enjoying them. And more importantly, she also shares some fun stories of oyster virgins, their first time tasting an oyster, their first-hand accounts, which are always fun to read. Written in Muriel's sophisticated yet personable style, this is a lovely book. I highly, highly recommend it. Meet Paris Oyster, a love affair with the perfect food. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast, where I'll recommend a book, a film, a recipe, or from time to time, introduce you to an expert who offers insight into how to live simply, luxuriously. Anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonjour!